In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to edit the results slide in QuizMaker. We'll be taking a look at topics such as the timeline, feedback layers, the results slide options, and the slide itself. Now, I will be working off of the QuizMaker base quiz slide that's available in the practice files that you can download. However, you don't need this particular file to follow along, as all of these topics are really independent of the file itself. Now, if you are starting from scratch with a blank quiz file, your results slide will look something a little more along the lines of this here. I'm simply using a custom layout in the background, but you don't need that layout. Once again, the topics that we'll cover here are independent of the file. So enough about that. Let's go ahead and get started with editing the results slide in QuizMaker. Now, the first step to editing our results slide is to access the results slide, and to do so, you'll want to make sure that you're on the Questions tab with the Home tab here selected, and that's where you will find Edit Results. So give that a click, and it will open up into the Edit Results environment. And to look at a few things here, just to give you a sense for the layout, we've got the slide information right here. So this is the visual on the slide, and we have the timeline down below. We've got the result slide options, and we've got these really cool feedback layers. Let's begin by talking about those feedback layers. So you might ask yourself, well, what is a layer? What is a feedback layer? Well, let's put this into some context. Let's say you're taking a question and you submit an answer on a question. Typically, you receive some type of feedback. Correct or incorrect pops up over the top of the question. Well, that information is residing on a layer that appears over the top of that question. So what you have then is you have a base layer. In our case, we have the results slide, which is a base layer here. And then if the learner succeeds, they receive this information, which appears over the top of that base. Or if they fail, they receive this information. So it's kind of neat here. We've got these three different layers that we can work with. And here's the point to keep in mind here. Anything that I put on the base layer, this result slide layer right here, will appear on the success and failure layers, because the results slide layer here is always going to be present. So let's say I add a shape here onto the screen. Regardless of whether it's a success layer or failure layer, it's going to be visible. Now, it will be grayed out here so that we can really focus in on these layers. But if I preview here and it will show me the success layer, you'll see that that element is there. And it will always be there because it is on this bottom base layer. That's that static constant layer. So if I know there are some elements that I always want to have, whether the learner succeeds or fails, I would put those on the result slide base layer. So what this does give me the opportunity to do, though, knowing that the success layer and failure layer will look a little bit different, or can look a little bit different, I can customize the look and the feel. So for example, let's say I'm going to come into the success layer. We're going to get rid of this line. I want to move this information here over to the right. And I'm going to put a little character, illustrated character. Let's have her come in, and she's excited and she's happy because you have passed. There she is. We will crop her. There we go. So what I can do, and feel free to build along with me if you'd like here, we can insert content here on the success layer, and it is going to look different from the failure layer. I can come into the failure layer and I can build right here and do something similar. Heck, here's another cool tip. I can use all of these great tools up here, pictures, captions, videos, to put information into my layers. If I want to put a video in here, I could put a video on the failure layer. Maybe it's a video of somebody saying, oh no, that's too bad, try again. I could bring a web object in, I could bring audio in. So I can do a lot of different things on these individual layers. You can also come in and customize the font. Maybe on the failure layer, your font is going to be Adobe Gothic, and on the success layer, your font is going to be, let's go for Adobe Arabic. So it's going to be different. It can be different sizes. So really, you can completely customize the look and the feel of your feedback layers. Just keep in mind that anything that's on the base layer is going to be constant and always appear, whereas the success and the failure layers can each have their own unique look and feel. So something else to keep in mind when you're working with feedback layers here is that they each have a unique timeline as well. So not only do they each have their own content, but they each have a unique timeline. What that means is that I can have things happening in terms of animations and such as well. So let's say I want the failure layer to have something happening. Let's animate something in. Let's pull this back down. Let's animate in a character. And she is going to fade in. So on the failure layer, she is going to animate in here at the 1 second mark. On the success layer, we're going to have her animate in at the 2 second mark. Again, these are each independent timelines. So this is what the failure layer is going to have happen. She's going to animate in. And if it's a success layer, she's going to animate in at the 2 second mark. So the important thing to keep in mind here with layers, and here's a little bit of a twist, the result slide base layer here, just as anytime I insert a shape or an item here on the screen, it is always going to appear here on this failure and success layers. Its timeline is always going to run as well. So if I insert a shape here, let's say we put that there, and we have that animate in. Let's have it fly in from the left. Regardless of whether it's success or failure, that line is always going to appear because it is on the base results layer. So if we preview this, here's a success layer, that line comes floating in, here she comes. So it's kind of neat. You can have two timelines functioning in concert at the same time, and it really gives you the opportunity to create some neat customizations and some neat looks. So keep that in mind as you're working with these success layers and failure layers and this base layer. They each have a unique timeline to them, and the result slide timeline, this base layer timeline, is always going to run. Now the last item that we'll take a look at are the result slide options. Just as the failure and success layers each have their own timeline, they can contain their own content that appears here on the screen, we can also alter the success and failure options as well. So for example, let's say the learner has failed this quiz. Well, do we want them to be able to review the quiz? If not, I would deselect, and you'll notice that for a lot of these options, they correspond with what's here on the screen. If I want the learner to be able to review their quiz but not see the correct and incorrect answers when reviewing, I could deselect that item. If I want them to be able to print their results out, I would select that, and you'll notice the print results button appears. So what I'm doing very quickly is I'm customizing the options when the learner fails. Do I want them to be able to retry the quiz? How many times should they get to retry that quiz? When they finish the quiz, should we close the browser window? Or maybe send them to a URL which has some remedial information if they've failed. So what I can do is I can set up the failure results here, and they can be completely different from the success results. Maybe the learner only gets to go to this URL if they succeed. Maybe this is a successful landing page where they get some more information for something that you're putting together. So what you can do here with these result slide options is once again customize what happens after the quiz finishes, whether they fail or succeed. So that's a little bit about working with your result slide in QuizMaker. They are a lot of fun to play with, and really want to encourage you to let those creative juices flow. Hop into the success and failure layers, work on the visual design, use their timelines perhaps in concert with what's happening on the base layer, and then come in here and work with your result slide options to customize what you want the learner's next steps to be, whether they fail or succeed. In the meantime, should you have any questions in terms of editing the result slide in QuizMaker, please join us at the eLearning Heroes community. Come on over into the forums, and we will be there to help you out, along with a lot of other Articulate Studio and QuizMaker users who are also there helping one another, sharing information, sharing best practices. So once again, come on over. It's the eLearning Heroes community, and we will be there to help you out.